Bob here, Chopper Bob Customs, and on today's episode of Uncle Dirtbag's Rusty Crusty C10 Gets New Floors, we're going to be turning our attention to the cab support, the lifter cab support, and the floor extension panel for the rear of the truck, or the rear of the floor of the truck. These will form the foundation of the rocker panel and the cab corner, and there's some modifications that need to be made in order to make it work. The first of which is this tab on the cab corner has an extra amount of material here that prevents it from fitting into the floor pan like it's supposed to. See it? Yeah, right there. So this needs to be bent over so that this will drop down in there, and then also this tab right here needs a little bit of a tweak if it's the same as the other side. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and marked out approximately where the flange, this flange right here, is supposed to be on the inside of this. And all this is simply, these are 1/2-inch holes. This is 1 inch wide. So these holes are 1/4 inch on either side of the holes to give me a line there. And then that will allow me to see that basically we're 6 7/8 of an inch away. And there's about a 1/16 of an inch thickness here. So I'm sorry, 5 7/8. So there's about a 1/16 of an inch thickness here, roughly 5 3/4. Well, 6 3/4 from the outside edge. So if I come over here on the floor, cab floor support, and come over 6 3/4. And put a mark. And do your thing down here. Hopefully that will give me an indication of where the brake needs to be to make this fit in the floor. And it'll probably require a little bit of fudging, because if anything, I've learned that these panels do not fit the vehicle exactly, and they do not fit themselves exactly, but they're a good starting point. And I think what I'm going to do, because 6 3/4 doesn't actually work for this up here at the top, I am going to go ahead and make it a little bit wider and a little bit narrower at the bottom. Because I think what's probably going to happen is this is probably going to have to be closed up. I bet this brake right in here is not tight enough. So if you can see what I've done here, this was 6 3/4 at the top, and as you can see, it's way out of line with the top flange, which indicates to me that this top flange is probably too far this way. So I basically came off of the top flange, and then down at the bottom I came inside that line to keep this as pretty much as even as I possibly can. So now let me get set up, and I will see if I can't get this folded over so that it'll fit into the floor pan. Okay, so I've got it in the vise. Now obviously I'm not going to be able to make the complete break here in the vise, because this is not a box and pan vise. What I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to get it started so that I have a good straight crease in the material, and then I can finish it up with hammer and dolly. Fit? No, it won't. So I'm going to have to get it from the dolly. Let me see what I've got. Okay, I really would have liked to have used a heel dolly for this, but none of my heel dollies are small enough. I tried a toe dolly and I really can't get a good grip on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my piece of leaf spring in the vise and use it as a method of making this brake finish up. And as I suspected, I think this brake is probably a little bit too soft. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can. Probably go to the vise. This right here needs to be broke out of the way. Okay, now as you can see, with the flange flat on the bottom of the floor piece and with it driven clear in here like this, I've got a huge gap down here. So I'm going to have to get this welded in and figure out whether I need to move these flanges on the floor brace or whether I need to move the inside of the rocker panel. So let me get resituated here. I'll get set up on the truck and start cutting stuff out of the way so I can get working on this. Okay, so as I've mentioned in a previous video, you've got to be thinking steps ahead before you do things so that you don't end up messing things up to the point where you can't make things happen. So in this case, when I put the floor pan in here, I'm going to want this area right in here to register the replacement floor panel so I can determine where it needs to be side to side in the truck. So I don't want to cut this brake off right here, I want to leave it. So I'm going to bring a cut in through here to leave that up there. This down here I don't need. I do need to have that to register. Now when I get back to this, I don't need from here on back because this really interferes with fitting the floor up correctly. So I want to come back and cut into here, but I don't want to cut too deep because there's not enough material on the floor replacement panel to do there. So I'm going to probably put the cut about 1 inch in. That'll still allow the floor to sit down on top of it, but it won't restrict the movement this way. This will be doing that. When I get back to the area where the cab support is located, then I've got a different problem because I actually have to come back further than the material on the floor pan replacement, the floor pan extension replacement, and I actually have to make a piece to fit into here. Fortunately, it's just a flat plate and I can use that to cover the hole up. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting along through here and try to get this out of the way so that I can get this floor pan in here and start, well, get the cab support in here and see what modifications I have to make to it and the floor pan. Okay, so fortunately, this channel is in better shape than the other side was. And so all I really need to do is cut the new cab support to length, and I'm probably going to try and butt weld it in there. I think what I'm going to do is cut it a little bit long and probably put a joggle in it so that it'll lap inside of here, so that when I weld it, it doesn't have to be a perfect fit, because a lot of times it's very difficult to make a perfect fit on these. Okay, so I've done some measuring, and it looks as though the floor angle over here is correct, which means that I'm going to have to modify the cab support. So I'm going to go ahead and make some cuts and drill out the spot welds on this panel right here, which is the floor extension. And that way I'm going to be able to set it down in here and try to get it so that it I verify the angle, and then I'm going to have to fit the brace to the floor section. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting on this right now. So I've cut it a little bit short, and you got to be careful that you don't cut through the back of the cab wall, just in case that's not part of what you're going to replace. It's going to go on the other side. Let me move the camera, and we'll get the spot welds cut out. Okay, so what I've done is I've come in with the replacement cab corner and pushed it up here as tight as I can get it. And I've put some marks on here. Now they're nowhere near perfect, but they're close enough so that if I stay at least an inch away from those lines, I should be in really good shape. Now, with that being said, I've got rust holes that they weren't actually holes, but they were rusted out to the point where I was able to poke through them up to about right here. And GM put the spot welds in pretty hard on this. So I think I've got a spot weld right here, and then I've got one right here. So this one back up in here is the one I need to take out, and then I can come up and cut this panel really low and inside that line, but on the other side of this spot weld. And I think that would be okay to help me get that out of there so I can fit the floor. So with that said, let's see if I can get that spot weld out. This Clico that I put in is nowhere near in the right place. It's too far forward, it's too far out. But I wanted to be able to hold the floor pan in here to make sure I had a good fitment. And what I'm finding is that the angle between it and the B-pillar are really, really close. So what that tells me is I'm going to have to modify the cab support so that the angles of these flanges match the floor pan. Yeah. So let me get started on that. Okay, so I wanted to do one more check just to make sure that I was close. And this isn't perfect, but it is close. And it's close enough that I know that this floor pan and this B-pillar are in the same alignment. So I am going to have to make the cab support fit the floor pan before I put the cab support in here. So with that,
So before I decide on how I'm going to modify the floor brace, I need to make sure that I'm modifying in the correct direction. Because basically what I've got right now is the brace is like this compared to the B-pillar and the floor pan. So I need to bring it out. So I can either do it by bringing it out at the bottom, or I can do it by bringing it in at the top. So there's two things that I really need to know. I need to know the angle that this is going to go up there at, and I also need to know where this break is in the floor, because there's a break in the floor right there, and then there's also a break in the cab support. So, and it's not going to be perfectly accurate, but what I know is that the break occurs right at about 10 3/4 from where the top of the flange of the cab support needs to be. So if I measure from here 10 3/4 on the cab support, that should be where the break is, and that'll tell me whether I need to tip it out at the top or the bottom. Obviously one, all I have to do is cut a pie shape out of the part. The other one, I have to cut a slot and then make a pie shaped piece to weld in place. Pretty simple. So 10 3/4, and then the other thing that I've got going on is that I need to know what the angle is. And here again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I kind of need to know where that is going to fit in relationship to the floor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my angle match Okay, so that's approximately the angle that it needs to run back up to where I'm going to attach it to the cab support. So, let's get over to the workbench and see what we got going on. Okay, so if I butt this up with both flanges down here up against the floor piece and I check the angle, it's pretty close the way that it is here. So I think I'm in probably pretty good shape here. Then if I measure from here to the break, 10 1/2 inches. So the 10 3/4, I cannot slice a pie shape sticking out of it and pull it in, because that would make me too close on the break, because I'm like right at 10 1/2 right there, and if I were to bring this in, I'm going to be at 10 or less. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to slice down through here, fold the flange out, and make a triangle shaped piece to go in there and weld it in place. I prefer to do it the other way, but it is what it is. Okay, so with that, I've got the cab support modified to fit. I'll let that cool off and then work on fitting it into the truck. With the cab support fitting the floor is lining up really good with the bolt holes here. The holes on the floor are just a little bit forward, but that is okay because the floor is a little bit forward because of interference here and also up here at the front. When I cut those off and slide the floor back, I think the holes will be almost right on. They might need a little bit of elongation with the die grinder. I've gone ahead and marked where the old floor drop over needs to be cut off, and I'm coming underneath and I'm going to scribe where the floor drop off needs to be trimmed back. Okay, so because of the fitment issues, I've decided to try and make 3 tabs to go inside the existing one so that when I weld this all together, I have spot welds holding 3 tabs to the inside of the existing cab support. I just don't know how accurate I can be, and I just don't want huge gaps. I've already got enough of them on the floor piece, but that's not so critical. This right here actually supports the back corner of the cab. So the one thing that I do know is that the cutoff is 7/8 of an inch from here. On both sides. And it sort of makes sense because there's a little bit of the curve left there of the brake. So this top flange I'll cut off. I'll probably cut it a little bit long, and that way I can trim it to fit. Hopefully I'll have to trim it to fit. And then I'm going to have to figure out where to make the cuts along the sides. Like I said, probably back in about an inch of flap to put in there. Okay. So let me go take some measurements and I'll come back and try and figure out where these need to be. All right, so I've cut the floor out. I've sort of got the cab support modified to slide inside of the existing cab support, and I'm going to have to make some filler pieces here and here and then weld it on the outside, on the front and on the bottom, and I'm going to then cut off the back tab that goes inside and weld the two pieces together from the inside because I cannot get to the outside of it. But right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put two healthy tacks in, but I'll be pulling those back out. What I want to do is I want to get this situated so I can make sure I know exactly where my rosettes are going to go and how this is all going to go together. So I'm going to just put two tacks in right here. To lock this together. Okay, those will be easy to cut out, but they'll keep it from moving around while I'm fitting the rest of this stuff. So with that, it's getting dark. I'm probably going to call it a day, and we'll finish this up tomorrow. Okay, prep time for welding. That means drilling lots of holes. I like to, whenever possible, duplicate the factory spot welds as close as you can. However, this was so rusted out, and it seems like in 61 they didn't use very many patterns. They just kind of put spot welds where they wanted to. Maybe they had a quantity that they had to do, and so I'll find 2 or 3 stacked up right next to each other, and then I'll see huge gaps, and they're not very consistent as to how well they're put together. So basically what I've done is I've mapped it out about 1.5 inches apart, which seems to be a fairly common spacing on spot welds. So let me get started putting some holes in here. I've got the weld-through primer on. I've got the rust taken off, paint taken off. The rust taken off, I got most of the rust taken off. There's a lot of pits on some of this stuff. Truth of the matter is this cab should have probably been dipped. At the end of the day, that doesn't make sense on this truck. So you just kind of have to roll with it. Do the best you can. In the scheme of things, when you look at the rest of the truck, this is not a permanent truck.
but the guy's going to enjoy it. That's what it boils down to. So with that said, I need to start welding in the floor pan, and then when I get it all tacked in, I got to make well, at some point during the tacking process, I'm going to make sure that the cab support still fits up in here. Again, this is one area where you need to watch what you're doing in the order. Because of this lip right here, I don't think you can get the cab floor in over top of the body mount, the cab corner mount, if it's in place. Because you'd have to pull this out to get it to drop down in between here and here, because you've got this lip here blocking your way. So with that said, I'm going to start trying to get these corners locked in, and then we'll work our way around and see if I can't get some of the rest of it locked in, and then make sure that the cab support is still going to fit. Okay, so I need to weld the down panel of this floor section to the down panel that was there originally. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm also going to have to get in here and see if I can't trim about a 1/16 of an inch off the bottom of that down panel, because now it is interfering with the lip on the back panel of the cab. So I need to do that. Okay, so here I am. I got it trimmed up. I'm wishing I had a 2-post lift. I got earplugs in so I do not get hot dingle balls down my ears. And we'll see if I can't do this without setting myself or the truck on fire. Cover me, I'm going in. Okay. That's not going anywhere. So I've reached the end of another day. I've got just a little bit more work to do that I'll catch tomorrow. I've got to get the, oh, this is a mess back here on the welds, but it's solid.
I got to get the panel cut to fill in that hole, grind all the welds down, and this will be done. And I can move on to the rocker panel. Okay, we're ready for the final piece of the puzzle. The floor extension doesn't come up far enough to fully catch this area right in here. You also need to weld it in after you've welded this in, and so access for welding, you kind of need this window here, but you need a piece to fill that in. So I've gone ahead and cut it out, and the one thing that I have done, I don't know whether you can see this or not, I've got two reliefs ground back in it. Whenever you cut something like this, sometimes you got to cut into something you don't want to cut into in order to get cut out what you do have to get cut out. And because of that, I've got cut through on this back flange, and I've got mostly cut through on this front flange. And rather than try and weld that up and then clean out the proud so that this will fit in here, I've gone ahead and relieved the areas out. So now what I can do is I can tack it in place, and then I can come up in here and fully weld that. And while I'm doing it, it'll also weld this to the floor. So basically I get it all tied together and it's good to go. And so with that, let me get my gear on and start tacking. Okay, so basically it's done. You wouldn't want to do an exterior panel this fast, sloppy, but for the interior most of these floor panels have ripples and so forth in them from the stamping process. Even the original ones, the reproduction ones do. It's going to be covered up with a seat in the case of this area right here, probably out to about right here. He may put carpet in it. I know on the underneath side, when I ask him about that, he says he's just going to spray some undercoating on it. Now, obviously, if this were a 6-figure, 7-figure show vehicle, you'd want the bottom of the vehicle to look every bit as good as the top. But for this application, it just doesn't make sense. And basically, it's good and solid. It's sealed up from the outside, and you're not going to catch yourself on any of that stuff. Maybe back here in the corner because I can't get to it. But the truth of the matter is, you're not going to be sticking your fingers back in there. So, with that, the next thing I'm going to do is take these braces off to make it a little bit easier to work on. Now that I've got it rigid at the front, rigid at the back, we're good to go with this floor. So, with that, I'm going to end, ooh, what a mess. I'm going to end this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you are a subscriber, thanks a lot. Like the videos. I want to know that you guys are enjoying what I'm doing out there. If you got any comments on how I can do things better, please let me know. I did have one person talk to me about my bandsaw, and I responded to him, you know, that I would like to have, he gave me some good information that I thanked him for.
He also said I needed to slow the bandsaw down, which I looked at it and I really couldn't. I mean, it was free. Good bandsaw is not in the budget right now, so I make do with what I got. I found LA Cutting. I found a blade from those guys. It was 25 bucks, which is basically all I've got into my bandsaw, and it cuts like a dream. Even at those high speeds, I've been cutting with it, and it's held up really well. So, but I could probably get better life out of it if I had a better bandsaw, and I could use a longer band as well. I mean, this is really tiny. So, but like the videos, comment, and hit that notification bell so you know when the next videos are coming up. Next step on this, I'm going to be taking this brace out. I probably won't record that. And then the rocker panel and the cab corner. But for now, Chopper Bob out.